Hello YouTube, it's Clormo with another video in my Season 2 Moving Pro X tutorial series, and I'm going to be talking today about sculpture, which is known as a modeling synth. So there's so many things that we could talk about here that to keep it at an overview or intro type of video, I'm going to be rushing a lot through a few things, so bear with me, but giving enough information that you can go ahead and play with this for yourself. So before we go into the tutorial, I promised to announce the winner of the round of the $20 Amazon gift card, and there is no winner. There were emails, there were comments, there were no subscribers and stuff, but nobody commented on the appropriate video or subscribed, I guess, out of the appropriate set of videos that compose this round. So with that, one note is that I'm gonna close the giveaway for the rest of the year because I'm gonna be out of the state in the next few weeks for Thanksgiving with the family, and then the family is gonna be visiting for the holidays. So it's gonna be quite difficult for me to put videos in this, kind of in this mode, right? Like a good informational video on a specific topic. I'm gonna keep putting some of my Spanish videos, Spanish tutorials. I'm not doing a Amazon gift card giveaway there yet because I just want to gauge how many people are watching those. So I'm gonna keep putting content out and putting beats, just not videos like this season 2, right? So season 2 would be over with this video, and then we're gonna start season 3 next year with alchemy, and from there on out I'm gonna be doing some quick tip videos and the like. So let's start with the tutorial. Just start right away. And this is sculpture. This is the synth. It's quite big of an interface. One thing that I wanted to say before I continue, if you noticed in the beginning of the video, I'm using my headphones, kind of going old school to the first videos I did. The reason for that is okay, I have a new mic and I'm testing it for a formal video. I have done some tests, and this should be better and get rid of that some of the audio issues that I was having on some videos. But if there's any problems with the audio, whatever, I'll try to fix them as much as possible. If there's still issues when the video is posted, my apologies. So sculpture, have it right here. As I said, the interface is pretty big, so I'm gonna be closing and opening throughout the video. Don't know how much, but I closed it right now because first things first is that here is the set of synths that I have been covering in my season 2 of that I have covered. So I started from the ESM, which was kind of the most basic one, and then I'm gonna end the season with sculpture, right, which is here. And I'm using, just for reference, if you haven't watched any of these videos, I'm using that MIDI information that I have been using throughout throughout the series, right? So I'm gonna open sculpture up again, and first thing, a few notes. Sculpture is a synthesizer that generates sounds by simulating kind of the composition of a string, of a vibrating string. So you're going to be hearing that a lot from me in this tutorial, talking about the string and the material that makes the string and how to hit it. You can also determine with sculpture how and where it's played, and by that it means the environment that string instrument is played, and also how, meaning how are you hitting it and how you are holding the strings, or those type of things. So you're gonna you can create also some more traditional synth tones or sounds with sculpture. You will see that from, if you have been paying attention and you have watched the other videos, you probably have noticed a few of the settings are kind of old or kind of we have seen before. But anyway, sculpture also generates sounds by using an object hitting another object. So that's where the concept of objects, as you're going to see if you're looking throughout the interface, or if you have seen it already, you see the word object throughout a few of those places of the interface, right? So last but not least, for clarity, what we're going to be talking about the object, right? The stimulated object, the one that we're going to hit, we're going to be referring to it as string, as I said at the beginning. String is what we are going to be talking about when I reference how you're going to hit the object. Sculpture requires a more measured approach to sound creation because it can give you a lot of different results. It's very powerful. It's very good not only for creating string type of instruments and sounds, but it's also good for many other things and effects. And you're gonna see when I go through the interface how that could be achieved. But the difference between this one and other synths that we have seen before is that once you start tweaking some stuff, just some little tweaks may give you a very sharp contrast between what you had at one point in your workflow versus that very next second that you change just a little parameter. So you have to be careful, you have to fine tune. And we're entering more into the sound design type of stage. So that's why I'm gonna fly a little bit through the interface once I'm done talking so much. But you know, I need to make these notes beforehand because if you haven't been exposed to synthesizers before and this is the first video that you see in my series about synths, go back and watch the other ones first, at least the ESM and the ES2 and maybe the EFM, because you will be better served and you will understand this a little bit better. You will lose that fear of working with it, and maybe you can get a little bit more creative right away. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to mention right away, it's as usual, it's the interface. So we have the interface here divided into three main kind of areas here of the interface. We have our sound engine at the top, which is all this box here, which is subdividing in other parts as well. We have our modulation section down here and our global control sources, which are this kind of a gray box, including this here, which is the morph ball, which is, or the morph pad, which you're gonna see is the main or the key difference in this synth. And for that, going back, right, and explaining to a little bit more, the sound engine has different things. So it has the string parameters, which are given by this material. This says material, this circle pad here. Then we have our object parameters, which you know, those are the objects that are used to stimulate and affect the string. So it's this area here. So we have three different objects with different settings, and this right here that you see, this line, would represent the actual physical string. So altering the material composition of that string is going to alter its thickness. It's going to alter its material, basically, what it's made of and how it's going to sound, what sound it's going to create based on that. If you can see here, you already have, depending on what you're leaning to, it's the kind of the type of sound that it's going to lean to. And also the objects are going to determine what you're hitting it with and what you are doing after you hit it. Like if you use the analogy of a guitar, right? You strum it with your finger, and then you have a finger or your fingers on the fret and interrupting that vibration of the string, which is going to give it the different tones, right? And different notes. Also, where you're hitting it, it's going to determine what different sounds, right? If you're lower in the fret, it's going to sound different than if you're up in the fret hitting your key. So those are the things that you are mainly controlling here. You also have your global parameters, which are dictated by this guys here. You have your usual tuning options that we have seen before, and your keyboard options that we have seen before with some voices, your bender range that we have seen this before as well. So those are your global parameters. You also have your processing parameters, which are, you know, going to capture that signal of the string, that sound, and then gives you more control over the tone of it or the sound. So you have your filter, you have your wave shaper. This is kind of new, but still very similar to how we have dealt with oscillators before, so that's nothing completely new. You have your pickup parameters, and also these are pickup parameters here, which are included here, like in the object section. And you also have your amplitude envelope parameters, which are defined here, right, in your normal ADSR type of control or envelope that we have seen before as well. Last but not least, from here in this engine section, we have our post-processing parameters, which affect the overall instrument, and they're given by a delay, a body EQ, and a level limiter. So this is kind of neat because it's a limiter that affects the whole instrument afterwards, so you can use it inside the synth as opposed to putting it in your channel strip separately. Now with that, we go down here to the modulation section, and when your modulation section, this is one of the parts that I'm going to just storm through. I'm not going to go back too much into it. You have two LFOs, and what's being added, it's some jitter generators, and that's exactly what it means. Jitter, it's taken kind of literal from the word. It just introduces some randomness to the overall performance, or how the instrument is going to sound like in real life, right? Because when you are playing a string instrument, again talking about strings, for example a guitar or a violin, depending on how you're moving your hand, how you hold the instrument or the object that kind of hit the string itself, how you're holding the fret, all of that is going to introduce some natural or more human type of performance, right? And jitter aims at giving you that, which is very important if you want to aim for more realistic sounds. Jitter is going to be a good option to play with and introduce right in your sounds. Then you have some vibrato controls, you have some velocity and note hitting type of controls or modulation that you can introduce, and also you can use controllers. Controller A and B are down here. You have a whole list of them right now. As a default, controller A, it's using the mod wheel, which is typical in many sense, and then controller B has foot, but you also have the same list available to you. And then on the right side you have some recordable envelopes, and that's envelope 1 and 2, and these are different from your normal volume type of envelope and tone and sound type of envelope that we have seen before, right? The volume type of envelope. What you can do here is in these two envelopes you can target different things, right? Like if I turn them on, you can target all of these options that are given by my engine and affect them over time. That's pretty simple what you can do, but in a graphical way. So you can introduce different variations, how that's gonna behave over time and what it's going to target. And also you can do it by your velocity, by the key scale. You can also go down to the controllers, and which includes the mod wheel, which is kind of also typical what you want to do your via. And you can do it in two different targets, and also you can set the intensity amount that's going to have. So it's a pretty neat type of newer modulation option that this synth gives us, but it's very powerful and very useful, and you can get lost in it, that's for sure. The last down here, as I mentioned, it's your global control sources. So it's again this gray boxed area, and what you're doing here mainly is assigning MIDI controllers to sculpture parameters. So all of this down here are just MIDI controllers that you can set, and that's self-explanatory. You assign one and you know that that one is going to affect something in the parameters that I have in Sculpture, and also the almighty Morph Pad, which is new and it's very unique. Now let's move to the let's go back over here and talk a little bit about the string, just to give you a little bit more detail. So the string parameters, like I said in the beginning, defines what the material is made of, you know, that string's made of, and its behavior. That's in essence what you can do here. As usual, I'm going to explain a little bit because this is kind of new, and also this is kind of new. Everything else, well, the Morph Ball is also new, so I'm going to focus a little bit, little explanations, side explanations to those areas. Everything else you should have seen before. If you haven't, please go back. Also, what we can do is that the string, like I said, can be excited is the right term, and disturbed, right? Hit and held and bend and bent and go up and down. Imagine that example of the guitar or a violin at all times. Everything that you can do to play that type of instrument, it's basically what you're doing here. You're modeling it using Sculpture. You're modeling the instrument and you're modeling how it's going to react when you hit it at certain different points. That's it. That's exactly what this area here, right? Like the material and your objects and string area do. So keep that in mind too, and you will, even though it looks with a lot of options and parameters, it's going to be easier to understand, and you're going to notice it's not actually that hard to deal with. So in essence, what you're doing in your objects, when you're hitting it and all that, you're creating a waveform, and you are describing mathematically those properties of the string and the environment and what the string is made of, the thickness, the length, like I said, all the characteristics and how it works over time, right? So that takes us to our material box here. What we have, it's we have some resolution sliders, tension sliders, and we have our media loss sliders. And down here we have our hide, key scale, and release view buttons. And you know, if I can give you a quick explanation of all of those, these three buttons here, they just do they just show and hide different parameters that are available to you. So release opens up this parameters. You can only change those. If you use key scale, you can do low and high key, you know, how it's gonna react when you are at a lower key or a higher key of the normal note, a root note that the Sculpture Synth is based on, which is the middle C. So that's something that it's a little bit, if you don't know your music theory or about notes, that might be confusing, but those that understand me should have understood what I said, you know. And then the hide, it just hides everything, so everything else that's on the outside of the pad, so that way you will not accidentally change those if you're working with the other three that I just mentioned. So the material pad itself, it's just gonna again determine the material and the properties, you know, the dampening properties. So if you lean, it works by moving this ball around. So if you move it over here to this corner, it kind of produces a more wood type of sound, and you don't know if you notice how the string became thicker, and then so on and so forth, right? And you can move it as a ratio. If you select any of these other two, mainly key scale, you can also independently set your point by moving the actual axis that you have. I'm trying to undo this and it didn't work, so I'm just going to recall the default. And then your other sliders, right? Your resolution slider, it determines the maximum number of harmonics that the sound, you know, at middle C, C3, you know. Search that out if you don't understand what I'm saying. It's just a node, right? Then your media loss slider here at on the left is gonna determine how the dampening that's caused by the environment, right? Like if you're underwater, air, whatever, depending where you are, that sound is gonna have some loss to it when you play it. That vibration is gonna interact with the environment. So yeah, it's a kind of sounds very scientific and technical, but it's exactly what this does. Then this your tension modulation sliders introduce some detuning of the sound, and you know, the aim here of the instrument or the synth is to try to be as, you know, realistic as possible. So you will see if you start tweaking things around that, you can achieve very good realistic sounds. So, and one other thing that I wanted to mention before I move on, these two axes here are called the stiffness axis, and then this is the inner loss axis. So as you're increasing that inner loss, you're tending more to a nylon sound or a wood sound, and so on and so forth, right? So that's might seem even easier now that you understand what this does, and you may go like, really, is that what it's going to be doing? Then that sounds very kind of intuitive to try to tweak this out and get the sound you want, and it actually is. You know, it's not overly complicated or complex. Then your object parameters, again, going to the left, all you have here is like the object button is gonna turn it on and off, and when you turn it on, you see how that changes. Same for object 2 and object 3. The main thing that you need to understand here is that each one has different settings available when you turn it on, and they are all dependent on the type. The type of you know, that you select from the pop-up menu is going to determine what settings you have here around the knob, and the sound that's created is also depending on, obviously, on the type, on your different parameters, and what gate mode you choose. So let's go around those a little bit just so that we get more acquainted with it. So again, you have your gate mode buttons, your type, right? You have a velocity sensitivity slider, so that just controls how sensitive the changes are going to be to velocity. Same for 2, 3 won't have it, and you will see why. Then you have the strength of the, you know, the strength knob, so that's how hard or soft that type of that hit that you're given the object is going to be. And then you have this timbre, it's the right pronunciation, slider, so that's going to control the tonality, you know, the sound itself, right? So keep using that word tone, and it just encompasses so many things, right? So the on and off buttons, just put it on and off. Your, like I said, the type is just going to give you different object types. So that in itself changes in the following way. So controllers or objects 1 and 2 can only have, well, can control how you're hitting it. Controllers 2 and 3 can control how you are dampening or disrupting that vibration along the string. So if I turn object 2 on and 3, the 2 is going to give me some other options, right? This one stops a blow, which is exactly that, you know, kind of you will blow into a kind of a wind instrument like a flute or something. And then object 2 start at disturb, but it also has the kind of the hitting parameters. So number 3 only can you be used for disrupting. So you cannot do a you cannot do any velocity sensitivity because you're not using that object to hit. And then you see you have the second half of what object 2 has. So your gate mode buttons just determine when the object is active. So key on, it's when the node goes on and off. Always it's between the node on and the end of the release. And key off is going to be triggered at node off. So when you release the key, your key node, right, it's going to produce the effect. The strength is just the intensity. Like I said, you can, if you place it at 0, it disables the hitting and disturbing kind of phase. But the difference is that the fader can, that parameter can be controlled, right, and modulated with morphing options as well. Then your variation slider is just gonna change the tone as well, and then the velocity sensitivity, like I said, is just gonna make you're just gonna introduce velocity sensitivity to the control, right, of the object. And you'll notice that from right now I have spoken a few things, right, and you see this red dot around these controls. That means that those are controllable by the morph pad. And since I'm gonna jump from here to down here pretty quickly, you're gonna notice how that works. And I just wanted to do something before I move on. I'm just gonna play what I have in the MIDI information with this factory settings and change a few things a little bit so you kind of get the idea. Although if I make it unmuted, then you're gonna listen to it. Let's try that again. I'm gonna change the tempo to 100 because that's probably too fast. Let's try that again. Right now I have a change a little bit. Notice how that is interacting, right? As I hit it. Now let's see how it interacts when I introduce some disruption. So you see how that string vibration is interactive. And also, let me show you this real quick. This is what it means by so you notice these numbers here, 1, 2, and 3, that's where the objects are along the string. So that's graphically simple to understand, right? If you hit it here and you are interrupting it with object 2 here and then object 3 here, you're gonna get a result, etc., etc. And then you have your pickup A and B, and this is exactly as it's an analogy to picking up in a guitar. And this is further controlled here by this pickup knob, which acts as a kind of a panning, or kind of a spread that it gives you, which further controls the pickup buttons A and B, right? So there's a bunch of tables in the Logic Pro manual that gives you what object type does, you know, exactly what you're hitting it with, what type of instrument you're hitting it with what strength, and all those things. So if you are trying to achieve a particular sound, reading through those is going to help you. So it's pretty neat information and pretty powerful. I'm hoping that you're seeing how powerful this thing is. So, you know, this two spreads here, as I was saying, these pickup parameters, the key spread, it sends the amount of panning that's given by MIDI notes. So this we have seen before. Is equivalent to the key scale of ES1 and ES2. So if I do that, you see that how it spreads the panning based on the MIDI information. Let's try that. You should be hearing how the different notes move around and spread around. And then, like I said, the pickup spread button is just a stereo or, you know, or surround. But that's kind of a more advanced topic. So moving on, now we're gonna move on a little bit. So we have our global parameters, like I said, the tuning. So I'm not gonna talk about those. Your filter, it's exactly the same thing we have seen before. You have a key, another key scale, introduction to that filter, your cutoff and your resonance, which are morphable, and then you have different type of cutoff options, different band passes, high, low, peak, band pass, notch. This is all EQing concepts. So check out my video on that if you haven't, if you don't have an idea how those work. Then this is just a delay that you can introduce into the processed signal that you have. The wave shaper is kind of an oscillator type of parameter, right? So you have a different, if you turn it on, then you have different types of wave shape curves. So I'm gonna try that tube light distortion. Then this input scale knob is just cut or boost the signal prior to being processed. So put some variation to it. Leave that steel. Sounds a little bit better. And then you have here your body EQ, which can work as a normal EQ, right? Low, mid, high, or it can work in a variety of other ways. And that if you see that mode drop down that I showed there, that I was showing, I should say, what you can do is it can emulate some resonant characteristics of all this other type of string instruments, from guitars all the way down to flute as well. So if you, and then you have your graphic here. When you have low, mid, and high, it's just an EQ, right? A normal EQ. So you can boost, cut frequencies, make it brighter, and then you can just you can graphically do that, or just move the knobs and achieve the same result. Or if you change it to acoustic guitar, for example, it's gonna introduce now a formants. So if you don't know what formants are, go check out my Evoc 20, which was the previous tutorial before this one, right after this one. So that format intensity knob that you have here, right, changes the peaks of it, and then you can shift them or you can stretch them, and that's it does, I don't want to say exactly the same thing. It does, or it works with a similar mindset or a similar concept to what the Evoc does with your formats. And you know, this fine structure slider here is just enhances the harmonic structure. You know, right there you have less harmonics, right here you have more. And obviously all of those give you different results for your sound. Then last but not least, I want to jump to this because I feel like I am spending too much time on the other stuff, as always, as I always do. Wanted to talk about the Morph Ball. Well, the Morph Ball works exactly how the word says. It morphs your parameters that you are using in the for your material and the whole sculpture engine here on top. And how does that work? This is important, so pay attention. So yeah, and well, I just wanted to say here again, just wanted to beat it down to the ground. This is your output level controls. Make sure that you are careful with this, okay? So you don't clip and do something crazy. Anyway, so let's say that right here at the 0 point, I have these parameters. Let's say that I want to change those over time, or I want to morph them into different parameters. So what you do is you move that morph ball to a different point, and you notice that this parameters changed already, right? Yeah, they're changing as I go around, and this by default it's kind of weird because it just it doesn't, you're not having control over it. But let's say that you want to have control over what the parameters are going to be when I move all the way here or here or here or here. Two things that you need to understand. You can right click on the ball and then say copy selected point, and then right click again and say paste to all points. So now all the points maintain the original parameters. You notice how nothing else moved, right? And now I have more control. So now I can say, okay, let me go to point A and change some things randomly. Let's put this LFO. So now you see how that changes over time, right? And it's changing. Actually, it's not going to control the LFO. I didn't do that on purpose, but it's good that I did it because I just got carried away and I guess too excited. But remember, it all controls only these parameters that have that red. So no modulation can be controlled there. And so on and so forth. You can do that. And you also have, if you want to randomize this, you have these other buttons here that let you randomize how everything changes over time as well, if you don't have anything recorded already. And you know, that makes it easier for you to do some kind of automation as opposed to doing everything manually. And then last but not least, you have this recorder button, which lets you record movements around the morph ball. And once you do that, when you change those parameters around, right, it's gonna control graphically. It's gonna show you how. Imagine what I did here. You're gonna have different diamond shapes around in a graphic, in a curve, and that's how the ball, the morph ball, is gonna move around. And every time you're playing your instrument, it's gonna go and change at each note depending on how you're modulating the notes and so on and so forth, and changing the different parameters. And then down here, this envelope, this morph pad envelope, lets you control how fast the morph ball is going to move around that recording, that graphic, that path that you set. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna close the tutorial really, because otherwise I'm just gonna go in depth into this, and that's not the idea. I just wanted to give you an overview. So I hope that you found this useful. I also want to thank again before closing the season 2 with this video. Thank everybody that has liked, subscribed, commented, sent emails, asked questions about Logic, and everything that you have supported. Everything, every kind of support. I want to thank all of you, and you know, just keep waiting more stuff that I'm going to be putting out pretty soon. If you speak Spanish and you're following my Spanish videos, then I'll see you there, because I'll keep doing those. Otherwise, I'm gonna see you next year. I'm gonna start with Alchemy, and that intro video is probably gonna take a long time too. And then from there, I'm gonna take a break from the synths, do a few quick tip type of videos, and then go back into a few select synths and give you a more in-depth overview, starting with Alchemy, because that's gonna be the first one I'm gonna do in season 3. So while that's fresh, I'm gonna start with that, and also because it's the more powerful synth of in Logic Pro. But like I have always said, you will find as you work with synths and more that each one has like kind of a main purpose where it's more advisable to use it, because it might be quicker to achieve a result than trying to use Alchemy or some other third-party plugin that's a little bit more complex to deal with. So again, thanks everybody. If you haven't subscribed, or you're watching this for the first time and you want to find me on social media, it's in the graphic in the lower third, everywhere that I'm at, so you can follow me there as well. And please subscribe and share and like this video, and let others know so they can also take advantage of these tutorials, especially